have to put on other pants. I've now changed my pants and it's a good time to talk now. So every year we get to this part of the year and it becomes really difficult. Like, do you increase your prices? Do you keep it the same? Do you add other offerings? Like to help with the rising expenses. It's always difficult. There's a lot of things to consider, a lot of factors that go into it, but nobody likes it. Nobody likes it, But in today's video, I'm going to talk about the factors that influence the price, how to price yourself correctly in the market as a barber. Yeah, so we'll talk about that today. How's it, Richie? Alright. Listen, I'm going to teach you a little bit today. Okay. But I'm not going to teach you technical skills barbering. I'm going to teach you, take this thing off, oh my gosh. I'm going to teach you a little bit about business. Because one day you're going to have your own barbershop. One day you're going to have to figure out what your price is going to be. And so I'm going to explain to you today what I take into account, what I consider when I build the price. Okay. So that's today. Besides cutting hair and
everything increases, right? The cost of living increases, prices, rent, everything increases, and we can only expect that barbers are going to increase their prices as well. But now, when is a good time to increase it?
Oh, week? Maybe at my haircut now. You can tell me next week onwards.
A good indicator would be if you have annual increases on your expenses, your rent is going up annually, it is a really good idea to also match that increase with, pushing up your price, because otherwise you're going to be absorbing that cost. And generally, there's not a lot of margin in the profit of, the price of a haircut. So an increase would be accepted annually. Another good indicator is that if you are booked out for 3 to 4 weeks, continually, you're always booked out. I can't get a haircut by you for 3 to 4 weeks. I need to book in advance. Yes, you can say it's because you're that good and people just love your offering, but a good indicator about how good you are would be that if you increase your price and people stop coming, then maybe they were just coming because you're cheap, not because you're good. Because if they were coming because you're good and they're happy in the exchange, their money for the service that you're offering, then they'll pay any price, right? So that's a good indicator, a good way of looking at, maybe I'm too cheap for my market, or it's time for me to increase my price. Maybe the biggest influencer in price is location, where you're located. If you're inside a mall, if you are in a CBD or a high traffic area, then you can expect that the prices will be more. In fact, it will be vastly more than what you would have paid in a residential area. And then another influence of price is the product offering. So, some people are adding more things to the offering. For example, they're offering a grooming service as opposed to just a haircut. So don't look at me like that. I'm talking about hulle was jou hare, they're washing your hair, and this is included in the price. So then you can also expect the price to be a little bit more. I think the thing that we really want to unpack, and this is for the barbers that would, like Jordan, that would one day want to open up their own shop, and they're kind of figuring out so what do I take into account? How do I, set my price? There's a few things that we need to consider here. One is what is your cost of, for you to be able to perform your services? What's the rental cost if you're paying rent? If you, I don't know. And then what is, the tools and the things that make up. I'm not talking about the once-off things like clippers and scissors. Those are sort of investments that you make into your future. And I suppose in the normal lane of becoming a barber or a hairstylist, then you would acquire those things in college already. But most of us, we've kind of learned inside the barbershop, or we kind of learned on our own. So we've acquired those things as we go along. But when you're serious about opening up your own shop, right, then you have to factor in, what is the rent going to cost me? What am I going to spend on marketing? What is my consumables? Consumables are things like your blades, your powder, the add-ons that make you, unique, that one product that you use that's different from everybody else. So those are your expenses. So you take your expenses, you bundle them all together and you come up with a number. That number is most likely, I don't know, I'm going to give it a number, but this is just an example. So let's say your expenses is 10,000 Rand. This is what it costs for you to operate for the month, factoring in everything. Then you take your personal expenses, and this is, what is your cost of living? What does it cost you to live? What are your bills? If you have school fees, if you have, I don't know, your food, your petrol, all of those things. And let's give that also a value. So that's 10,000 Rand. So now we've got 20,000 Rand for you to actually break even, for you to survive for a month. That is, be able to operate your business and pay yourself a 10,000 Rand salary. Now this doesn't usually happen in this way. It usually happens where you kind of just withdraw from your money all the time. Maybe not good business practice, not something that you should be doing, but this is how it works. This is what happens. At least we got a number now. That number is 10,000 or 20,000 Rand, right? So now you can work out. First thing I would do with that 20,000, like I know this is what I need, divide that into, how many days are you going to be working for the month? So if you're working 26 days, you divide it into 26. If you're working 20 days for the month, you divide that into, if it's just you, and we're kind of focusing on, not a big barbershop, we're talking about you as an individual starting from scratch. You need 20,000 Rand, so that's roughly 5,000 Rand a week, roughly, give or take. That's what you need. Then you got to figure out how many haircuts can you do per day to get to that figure. So it's not difficult to work those things out. So if you need 5,000 Rand a day, you need 5,000 Rand a week, you need 1,000 Rand a day. So if you're only cutting 10 people's hair, then you need to be charging 100 Rand. Where it becomes tricky, and you need to just apply your mind to it a little bit more, is when you look at what is the average price in your area. In other words, what's the going rate in your area? How much are people willing to pay for a haircut?
My cut costs anything from 100 to 140.
I'll pay $100.
No, I took it just a haircut.
Oh, just a haircut.
No shave and hot towel.
Haircut limit's about $200.
One of the other influences of price is, people often say this, especially in the age that we live now, which is, kind of the digital age, where people say, you got to charge what you're worth. What does that even mean? If I'm spending 20 minutes with a client and a doctor spending 20 minutes with a client, how do we equate what worth is? Can I charge 500 Rand for my haircut or 300 Rand? And where do we find this balance? Like, what is the going rate, So in Cape Town, CBD, suburbs, Cape Flats, we're taking Cape Town as a model. So I don't know where you live, please feel free in the comment section to tell me what's the going rate in your area. In Cape Town, it ranges anything from 100 Rand to about 300 Rand a haircut. Now, as I said earlier, that price is not an indicator to, measure skill. Because let me tell you something. I know a few barbers that can cut sculptures out of dead wood, but their cost is even below average. So, so don't let the price fool you that, because it's cheap, it's crap, or because it's expensive, it must be good. That's not how it works. People charge differently, and we are in an industry that the price isn't regulated. There isn't a set minimum price. I could literally take my prices and slash it in half, and there's nobody that's going to govern that. That's my offering. But you need to survive, and if you're like me, you're kind of looking at the big picture. You also don't want to damage the industry. Like, obviously I come first. I got to look after myself. If I'm hungry, I got to eat, and that costs money. So I got to look at what I'm charging and how much I need to survive. But you got to look at yours and then see how that works for you. Okay, so when you set your prices, when you think about, okay, I'm going to go on my own, what can I charge? There's things that you need to factor those things in. And then there's this, is, you pay the rate that you're paying at my shop because we are extremely good, and therefore this is what you pay. Now, this isn't set in stone, okay? This is subjective. People will pay what they feel comfortable to pay, in terms of they exchanging a value. They feel that this is worth the money that they are spending, but this doesn't mean that you know, when you start your own barbershop, you were working in a shop where 300 rand was the going rate, that you can take this model and just go home and charge 300 rand at home. You got to check your market there. What is, you know, the average cost per haircut in your market? And if, like we worked out what it is that you kind of need to survive, like we did that example earlier, and you take that to your market, and if your market is averaging 50 to 60 rand and you need 100 rand per client over 10 clients, then maybe, you know, you are outpricing yourself in your own market. Other than that, if you watched this far, like, you are awesome. I really appreciate it. My name is Warren. I have a channel that you're watching, and it's about barbering and grooming, and sometimes I, you know, color outside the lines a bit, if you will. You know, I take the camera with me, you know, on different things. I really do enjoy producing this type of content. If you're enjoying it, a sub to this channel would be amazing. If you want to be updated with, you know, what's new on Mr. Barber's channel, you know, the new topic or next week's topic, then also hit that notification bell, you know, and that way you stay informed with what's next on this channel. Other than that, listen, my name is Warren, this is Mr. Barber, and see you guys next week.
I am so grateful for each moment in time that allows me to explore a world in and around me. The best version of self